now that Amy has us all energized. Don't you wish we had Amy's energy? It's fantastic. So I'm back again. And this time we have another very interesting panel to talk about a very simple question about healthcare. So you're getting the drift, aren't you? At all these sessions, we take what seems to be something quite simple and we make it more complex. So again, we'll follow the same format. I'm going to ask them each to make sort of an opening statement, and I have some questions. And I'll probably go out and ask you, step to the mic so we can sort of figure this out as well. So the question before us is, how can healthcare be both good and inclusive? But maybe the question we have to start with is, can healthcare be both good and inclusive? Are there some structural issues that are getting in the way of this? And again, I think our panel is going to be quite sharp over this. So we can get into some good debate. So I think all of you know we're at a very interesting time with healthcare out there. So we have an amazing, again, you have to say, is the glass half full or half empty? But when you look at some of the things that have been accomplished really in the last 2 or 3 decades in healthcare, absolutely amazing. Just some of the technology alone boggles the mind. The pharmaceutical companies, which we'll talk about, I'm sure as we get into this, have come up with some amazing life-saving drugs, even though they're a little expensive. We'll talk about that. Not so accessible, but nevertheless, amazing. Some of the indices and the statistics around infant mortality, around life expectancy, again, from a perspective of history, life-changing and revolutionary early in its progress. But then there's the other side of it. And the other side of it is, this is all great if you have a lot of resources, if you live in a wealthier country, and even within the wealthier country, I can tell you in the United States, the debate over healthcare is as intense as it would be outside and in any developing world. So we have a situation where we have solutions to health problems, but it hasn't found its way, has it, to make this available to all, etc. So today we're going to be talking about this paradox, this contradiction. In Rwanda, for example, where they're now using drones to bring blood to the rural parts of the country. Oh, I haven't even seen that any place in the world with that. I noticed in the United States now, we now have something like 20,000 clinics in malls. Rather than sending people to hospitals, we're sort of decentralizing that, making it more accessible, etc. So the whole healthcare field is changing very rapidly. And today we want to talk about, can this be, both good and inclusive? And the 2 big challenges of this. So I want to try and see if we could look at a situation where we could end today by asking the question, as we will in the beginning, can we create healthcare systems that are inclusive and affordable, and deliver good outcomes at the same time? And with us today, we have 3 wonderful panelists that are going to help us as we start to deliver this. So let me start to my right, Runa Khan. Runa Khan is the founder and executive director of Friendship Bangladesh. She's an amazing woman on the ground. I like her on the ground approach, and will give us a perspective of healthcare on the ground, because she is both an Ashoka Fellow, a Schwab Foundation social entrepreneur, but a founder and executive director of Friendship, an NGO supporting communities in Bangladesh. So she has a very good experience across the country on the ground. Paolo Borromeo. close, close. Is with the Ayala Foundation, right? Managing Director of the Ayala Foundation, and also is the involved with they have a whole healthcare component of that. So he's very involved with that and can come about it from that perspective. And then finally, we have Chung. Oops, let me see. Let me get your name exactly right. Chung To. I just met a few minutes ago from Hong Kong, but as he told me, he's barely there because he's traveling all over China. Has done some amazing work with an NGO organization around AIDS with children with AIDS. So you can see we've got an extensive panel that can begin to answer these questions that we're going to start posing to them. So let me start with the first one. Runa, let me start with you. Do you think we can have a healthcare system that is both good and inclusive?
It depends a lot on what is it that you are aiming to do. So, to give an example, imagine yourself in an island which is 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer on a river which is 30 kilometers broad, running at a speed of, having a speed of 10 knots or 12 knots, island which is breaking, people are moving, you have nothing there, not even, forget about healthcare, you don't even have electricity, you don't even have a shop. In a context like that, which is totally remote, people are earning less than $1 a day for a family of 5 or 6, they also have the same rights as you for having healthcare. As you were speaking, it's a basic human right, because when you are suffering, no other development intervention is possible. How do you make healthcare there inclusive? It is inclusive because you need them there, and good. You need to step back and forget about all the norms of healthcare or systems which were made sitting in the cities or sitting in universities or designed by doctors. You have to be on the field and you have to develop systems there. And that's exactly what we did. So over the last 17 years, we have developed a kind of a mobile system for the ultra-poor region, which is based on inclusivity, with more than 150 doctors coming internationally providing health, and our local doctors providing what is today accepted to be one of the best healthcare systems in remote areas in the country. So it is possible.
As a country, where is healthcare today compared to where it was 10 years ago?
I think a lot of improvements have been made. Okay, we are actually, even in our healthcare systems, in our deliveries, the government initiatives, we have really improved. And however, it's still 70% of the people are in the rural areas, remote areas, and not even 20% of the medical people are there. And so at the end of the day, the caregiving is still far from being acceptable.
Interesting. I was thinking of you when I first started out. I was getting a master's degree in social work. And I grew up in a state above Boston, Maine. And the southern part of it is the more prosperous one. But inland was very poor. And they had the highest incidence of tooth decay in the country. And they had gone out and got a mobile van, equipped it, and it was sitting there for 2 years when I came to see it. And they said we couldn't find a doctor, a dentist, to take it around. So sometimes when you try and create systems, little things aren't so little anymore, and they become very major.
And that's exactly what, actually, we have to first see what is reality and what can be done, and what is the whole ecosystem of that whole place. And the socio-economic conditions, geographical conditions, availability, acceptability, etc. So what I actually did was, I took the whole healthcare system. Each person mattered, that was very important. Took the whole healthcare system and put it through a sieve. You see, saying, I know we knew the difficulties of doctors, we knew the difficulties of medical staff. So we started off at first with the hospital ships. This was providing secondary care because people there did not even believe that you could be cured. So we needed to perform miracles to show that you can be cured because that would change behaviors. So that was the first tier. Second tier were reaching into the communities with satellite clinics, which were providing primary care, which were manned by medics, not by doctors. Then we came to the third tier, which was we took people from the community, trained them in 5 years of medical dispensing medicines, identifying, and they are called the Friendship Community Medicaids, and we linked the three systems very strongly. To improve quality, we have put in an M-Health model, which is very interesting. So this is diagnosis, treatment, referrals, follow-ups, all marked with GPS locations, and these community medic aids are providing a continuity of services. What they can't do, it goes to the paramedics. What the paramedics cannot do, it goes to the doctor. All being centralized, you know, with a very expansive data and data web. Yeah. So
very interesting.
You don't let anybody fall through the gap.
Yeah, that's a big challenge. It's a big challenge. Paolo, Borromeo. I keep saying Borromeo. He's related to the Saint Charles Borromeo.
A little far.
Yeah, a little far, but yeah, close to it. So you're with the Ayala Foundation, Ayala, and you also are focused a little bit, it sounds like, on their healthcare practice. First of all, tell us a little bit about that. It sounds interesting.
Yes, no, thank you, Brad. Well, first of all, big congratulations, I think, to the organizers, Heng. Thank you to Ambassador Quisha. I see many friends, Mr. Edjua, for hosting and organizing this event. I think it's a fantastic event. And thank you for inviting us. We're happy to be part of it. I guess, well, first of all, I work for Ayala Corporation, and I run the strategy group for the group. But I also had our emerging healthcare business, which is one of our newest, if not the newest, business in the family. We do have a foundation, which is separate from Ayala Corporation. We call it Ayala Foundation. I think some of my colleagues from the foundation are also here today. But I guess my first just introduction, Brad, is to say that at the Ayala Group, we've taken deliberate steps and a real conscious effort to, I guess, impact society in two ways. One is through the foundation, and the second is through our businesses itself. No? And we call that concept really what we call shared value, which is a concept we borrowed from, I guess, from Harvard, from Michael Porter, where we start integrating inclusiveness in the very fabric of our businesses, whether that's in real estate or whether in telecom or banking, which I was telling my colleagues earlier, and more recently in healthcare and in education. The idea being that you can serve more of the underserved while still having a sustainable business model behind it. Which brings me to, I guess, my short answer to your question. Can healthcare be both good and inclusive? I think yes. I think the challenge is, can it be sustainable? The dilemma, and I think the big dichotomy is that the more inclusive you get, or the more inclusive you want to get, the harder it is to make it sustainable. At least from a private sector perspective, and we had this discussion earlier with Runa and Chung, and whose job really is it to make it inclusive. But yes, absolutely, it should be good. It can be good and inclusive. It's a question of how do you build a sustainable model to enable that inclusiveness. And I'd be happy to talk about how we think about inclusive business models for healthcare. But one thing I did just want to say is, I come from the private sector. I think to encourage real inclusiveness, it requires a multi-sectoral approach and a partnership with NGOs, with government, with the private sector, academia, to really be able to hit different points of the market. Yeah. So I'll leave it at that first, rather than.
I'd like to come back to this notion of a partnership, because I think on just about every panel we keep hearing about partnership between the public and the private. I can tell you, after many, many years of experience, finding these effective partnerships where each respect the others, where each are bringing something, is very rare and very difficult. But we'll talk about that, because everybody agrees that it has to ultimately come to this, but we have a hard time getting there. But let me go back to your company itself. So you're in the strategy group, and it sounds like you made a decision more recently than not to get into healthcare. Tell us about what did you see in the Philippines that led you as a company to start getting into the whole healthcare?
No, thank you, Brad, for asking that question. I think for us as a diversified business house, we always try to, number one, align ourselves with the national agenda. And recognizing that each country is very different from one another. We always try to say, what else can we do to uplift society and the local Philippine market. Naturally, as we did that exercise in our strategy group, it didn't take long to get to the sectors of energy, infrastructure, and then the softer infrastructure sectors, such as education. I believe my colleague Derek was speaking earlier as well, and healthcare. And healthcare in particular is a passion of mine, and I know a passion of many of my colleagues who are here with me today. One in the Philippines, it's still a very fragmented sector. A lot of incoherence when you talk about different institutions and how they work or don't work together. But secondly, in terms of outcomes, it just sometimes pains us when we hear about what you were saying earlier, infant mortality rates. I think we have 60 infants per day, or something of that sort. We have one of the most glaring, I think, we track our outcomes from what we call a patient life cycle, from birth to death. And we talked about infant mortality rates, but all the way to adulthood and all the way to end-of-life care. It's not a very, positive story in the Philippines. My chairman and I were sitting in a conference once, and a colleague from The Economist came to us explaining their new study on the quality of death across 80 countries. And he was saying, we measured different, capabilities, skill sets across different countries to measure the quality of palliative care, nursing homes, hospice facilities, etc., 80 countries. And the Philippines boasts 78 out of 80. And so we feel like there has to be, we just have to do something, or something has to be done. When you think about a healthcare system that is broken, can be improved, and as Runa said, is an absolutely fundamental human right. And so we absolutely have to do something in that field. And it didn't take us long to say, what can we do in this space? And since then, we focused on primary care and affordable medicine as our investment areas to begin with in the space. And hopefully we start, our vision in healthcare for Ayala is to create an integrated ecosystem where you have different touch points with the patient communities. But the idea is that you create more affordable mechanisms and more accessible mechanisms for people, especially the underserved, to be able to get decent quality healthcare.